You're scrolling through Instagram, you see that sneaker you love, the one that cost $150. Your heart races. You want it. You really want it. But then you see something that changes everything. Paying for interest-free installments. Boom. You click. You buy. No credit card. No interest. No guilt. Just you. That sneaker. And the promise that you can pay later. That's BNPL. And if you're between 25 and 35 years old, especially if you're Gen Z, you've probably done this. Maybe more than once. Maybe way more than once. Here's what most people don't realize. You're not just buying a sneaker. You're participating in one of the fastest and most dangerous financial movements we've ever seen. And today, I'm going to explain exactly what's happening, why you're doing it, and why it might be destroying your financial future without you even knowing it. My name is Jordan, and I'm here to help you understand money, invest with clarity, and build wealth long-term with discipline. If that makes sense to you, subscribe to the channel. Now, let's start with a fact that's going to blow your mind. 41% of all BNPL users in the United States missed a payment last year. 41%. That's not a small number. That's almost half. And for Gen Z, the number is even higher. Here's where it gets really interesting. Most of these people don't think they're at risk. They think they're being smart. They think they're avoiding debt. They think they're in control, but they're not. And I'm going to show you exactly why. Look, I'm going to be straight with you. BNPL stands for Buy Now, Pay Later. You buy something today and pay in installments later. Usually in for payments, interest-free, over 6 weeks. Sounds simple, right? Sounds safe, right? Here's the problem. It's not. Let me break down how it works. You find something you want. You choose BNPL as your payment method. The BNPL company, like Klarna, Affirm, or Afterpay, pays the retailer immediately. You get the product, and now you owe the BNPL company. You have to make for payments. Usually, each one is a quarter of the total price. If you don't pay, there's a fee. If you pay late, there's a fee. If you don't pay at all, there's a fee. And here's what most people don't understand. These companies aren't doing this out of charity. They're doing this because they make money off you. How? Well, they make money two ways. First, they charge retailers a fee, usually between 3 and 8% of the purchase amount. So if you buy that $150 sneaker, Klarna charges the retailer between $4 and $12. Second, they make money off you when you don't pay, late fees, collection fees, interest. It all adds up. Now, you're probably thinking, but Jordan, you said there's no interest. Technically, you're right, there's no interest if you pay on time. But here's where it gets really interesting. Most people don't pay on time. According to 2025 data from LendingTree, 42% of BNPL users made at least one late payment last year. 42%. That means almost half of all BNPL users are paying fees they shouldn't be paying. Here's the truth that makes people uncomfortable. Gen Z isn't using BNPL because it's smart. Gen Z is using BNPL because it's easy, and because it works psychologically. Let me explain. You know what the difference is between a credit card and BNPL. With a credit card, you see the bill, you see the total number, you feel the weight of it. With BNPL, you see for small numbers, $37.50, $37.50, $37.50, $37.50. Suddenly, $150 doesn't feel like $150. It feels like for small payments, and our brains love that. This is called price fractionation, and it's one of the most powerful marketing techniques ever invented. When you break a big number into small numbers, your brain doesn't process the total cost. It processes each small number individually, and each small number feels accessible, feels easy, feels safe. But here's what most people don't realize. You're not just buying one sneaker. You're buying for sneakers. Because while you're paying for the first sneaker, you've already bought the second. And while you're paying for the second, you've already bought the third, and so on. Suddenly, you have for payments of $37.50 due on different weeks. That's $150, but you don't see it that way. You see it as for small payments, and that's why it works so well. Now, here are the numbers that should scare you. According to 2025 data, 90 million Americans will use BNPL this year. 90 million. That's almost 1 in 3 Americans. And among Gen Z, the number is even higher. More than 50% of Gen Z prefers BNPL to credit cards. More than 50%. This isn't a trend. This is a fundamental shift in how people are spending money. Here's where it gets really interesting. BNPL isn't just a financial problem. It's a psychological problem. And that's why it's so dangerous. You know what the number one reason people use BNPL is? It's not because it's cheaper. It's not because it's safer. It's because it removes the friction from buying. Normally, when you want to buy something, there's friction. You have to think about it. You have to decide if you can afford it. You have to feel the pain of spending money. But with BNPL, that friction disappears. You don't feel the pain. You just feel the pleasure of having the thing. This is called pain deferral. And it's one of the reasons people get trapped in debt. Because when you defer the pain, you don't learn. You don't develop discipline. You just develop the habit of buying things you can't afford. Now, let me tell you a story. Let's say you have a budget of $500 a month to spend on things you don't need. Clothes, electronics, stuff like that. With a credit card, you spend $500 and that's it. You see the bill. You feel the pain. You learn. But with BNPL, you don't spend $500. You spend $1,000 because you don't feel the pain. You just see for small payments. And because you don't feel the pain, you keep buying. You buy more and more and more. Suddenly, you have $2,000 in BNPL pending, spread across 8 different purchases, 8 different due dates, 8 opportunities to miss a payment. And when you miss one, there's a fee, $25, $30, $40. Suddenly, that $100-$50 sneaker cost $180, and you don't know why. You just know you're broke. Let me share some numbers that are going to make you think twice before clicking that BNPL button. Again, first, delinquency. According to the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, the BNPL delinquency rate increased from 34% in 2023 to 42% in 2025. That's a 24% increase in just 2 years. That's the fastest growing delinquency rate in the entire consumer lending sector. Faster than credit cards, faster than personal loans, faster than anything. Second, market size. The BNPL market in the United States is expected to hit $122 billion in 2025. $122 billion. That's bigger than the GDP of many countries. And it's growing at a rate of 12% per year. That means by 2028, the global BNPL market is expected to hit $700 billion. $700 billion. That's real money. Money that people are borrowing. Money that people are struggling to pay back. Third, Gen Z. 47% of Gen Z is expected to use BNPL in 2025. 47%. That means almost half of an entire generation is using BNPL. And here's where it gets really interesting. Gen Z is using BNPL for things that should never be financed. Food, medicine, utility bills. According to 2025 data from LendingTree, 33% of all BNPL users use BNPL to buy groceries. Groceries, things you eat and then they're gone. You're financing food. You're paying interest on food. Well, technically not interest, but you're paying fees. And it's the same thing. Now, let me show you how this becomes a real problem. Because here's what most people don't understand. BNPL isn't an isolated problem. It's part of a vicious cycle. You start with one purchase, $150. You use BNPL, you feel good, no pain, no guilt. You buy again. $200, BNPL again, no pain, again, no guilt. You buy again. $300, BNPL again. Suddenly, you have $1,000 in BNPL pending, spread across 5 different purchases, 5 different due dates. Now, here's where it gets really interesting. You get your paycheck. You have $2,000. You have $1,000 in BNPL pending. You have $500 in rent. You have $200 in food. You have $150 in gas. Suddenly, you don't have enough money. You miss a BNPL payment. There's a fee, $25. Now you have $1,025 in BNPL pending. You get your next paycheck. You pay the BNPL, but now you don't have money for other things. So you use BNPL again for food, for gas, for things you should be paying cash for. Suddenly, you're in a cycle. You're using BNPL to pay for things you can't afford. And because you're using BNPL, you're paying more than you should. Because you're paying more, you have less money. Because you have less money, you use BNPL again. And so on. It's a vicious cycle. And it's exactly what's happening to millions of Americans right now. Now, you're probably thinking, but Jordan, at least BNPL doesn't have interest. Credit cards have interest. So BNPL is better, right? Let's say you have a credit card with an interest rate of 20%. You buy $150. You don't pay it back immediately. You pay it back in 6 weeks. How much do you pay in interest? Well, it's complicated because it depends on how the card calculates interest. But let's say you pay about $3 in interest, $3 now, with BNPL. You don't pay interest. You pay $0 in interest. Seems like BNPL is better, right? But here's what most people don't realize. You're not comparing the same thing. With a credit card, you have a credit limit. You have a limit on how much you can spend. With BNPL, you don't have a limit. You can make as many purchases as you want. You can have as many pending payments as you want. And because there's no limit, you spend more. Way more. According to 2025 data from Numerator, 4% to 4% of BNPL users are more likely to make impulse purchases than non-users. 4% to 4%. That means BNPL doesn't just remove the friction from buying. It also changes your behavior. You buy more stuff. Stuff you don't need. Stuff you can't afford. So yes, BNPL doesn't have interest, but you're spending so much more that you end up paying more overall. You're paying in fees. You're paying in impulse purchases. You're paying in missed opportunities. Because the money you're spending on BNPL is money you're not investing. It's money you're not saving. It's money you're not using to build wealth. Let me show you the real impact of this on your long-term financial life. Let's say you're 25 years old. You make $50,000 a year. You have a budget of $500 a month to spend on things you don't need. Clothes, electronics, stuff like that. You have 40 years until retirement. Scenario 1. You don't use BNPL. You spend $500 a month. $6,000 a year. You invest the rest. You invest in an index fund that returns 10% a year. After 40 years, you have $1,500,000. Scenario 2. You use BNPL. You spend $1,000 a month. Because you don't feel the pain, you spend double. $12,000 a year. You invest the rest. You invest in the same index fund. After 40 years, you have $900,000. You lost $600,000. $600,000. All because you were using BNPL. Now, you're probably thinking, but Jordan, that's just a difference of $500 a month. That's not so bad. But here's what you're not seeing. You're not just losing $500 a month. You're losing the compound growth on that $500. You're losing the interest on the interest. You're losing decades of growth. And that's why it's so dangerous. Now, you're probably thinking, okay, Jordan, you've scared me. What do I do now? Here's what you do. First, stop using BNPL. Just stop. It's not complicated. You don't need BNPL. You need discipline. You need a budget. You need a plan. BNPL is none of those. BNPL is just a way to defer pain. And deferring pain doesn't solve the problem. It just makes it worse. Second, if you already have BNPL pending, create a plan to pay it off. Don't just pay the minimum payments. Pay it all, as fast as possible. Because while you have BNPL pending, you're at risk. You're at risk of missing a payment. You're at risk of paying a fee. You're at risk of getting into a vicious cycle. So pay it all now. Third, create a real budget. Not a budget you think you should have. A budget you actually have. How much do you make? How much do you spend on things you need? How much do you spend on things you don't need? How much can you invest? Write it down. Look at it every day. Because when you see the numbers, you can't ignore them. You can't pretend they're not there. You have to deal with them. Fourth, if you want to buy something, wait a week. Just 1 week. Put the item in your cart. Leave the website. Come back a week later. If you still want it, buy it. If you don't want it anymore, you save money. Because most impulse purchases aren't really purchases, they're emotions. And emotions change. So wait. Let the emotion pass. And then decide. Fifth, invest the difference. If you were spending $1,000 a month on BNPL, and now you're spending $500, invest the other $500. Put it in an index fund. Put it in a high-yield savings account. Put it anywhere that earns interest. Because that money is going to grow. It's going to multiply. It's going to become wealth. And that's how you build wealth. Not by spending less. By investing more. Let me be clear about something. BNPL isn't inherently bad. If you use BNPL to buy something you really need, something you already plan to buy, something you can pay off on time, then it's fine. BNPL is just a tool. Like any tool, it can be used well or poorly. The problem is most people are using BNPL poorly. They're using it for impulse purchases. They're using it for things they don't need. They're using it because it removes friction. And because it removes friction, they're spending more than they should. And because they're spending more, they're building less wealth. And because they're building less wealth, they're having a worse life. Here's what most people don't realize. You're not just buying a sneaker when you use BNPL. You're buying a life of less wealth. You're buying a poor retirement. You're buying less freedom. You're buying fewer choices. And all because you don't want to feel the pain of spending money now. But here's the truth. The pain now is way smaller than the pain later. The pain of not buying that sneaker now is small. The pain of not having money to retire at 65 is huge. Really huge. So choose the small pain now. Choose discipline now. Choose wealth later. Now. Let me be straight with you. If you're using BNPL, you're making a mistake. It's not a small mistake. It's a big mistake. A mistake that's going to cost you hundreds of thousands of dollars over your lifetime. But it's a mistake you can fix. Now. Today. So here's what I want you to do. First, stop using BNPL. Now. Not tomorrow. Now. Get out of your BNPL app. Delete it if you have to. Because while it's there, you're going to use it. And while you're using it, you're losing money. Second, create a budget. Write down how much you make. Write down how much you spend. Write down how much you can invest. Because when you see the numbers, you can't ignore them. You have to deal with them. And when you deal with them, you change. You change your behavior. You change your life. Third, subscribe to the channel. Because I'm going to keep teaching you about money. I'm going to keep showing you how to build wealth. I'm going to keep helping you make better financial decisions. And if you want to do that, you need to be here. You need to be listening. You need to be learning. Because here's the truth. Nobody's going to build wealth for you. Nobody's going to do it for you. You have to do it. You have to make the decisions. You have to have the discipline. You have to have the plan. And if you want to do that, I'm here to help. So subscribe. Turn on notifications. Watch the next videos. Because your financial future depends on it. Your retirement depends on it. Your freedom depends on it. And you deserve better. You deserve wealth. You deserve freedom. You deserve a life where you're not worried about money. And that's what I'm going to help you build. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video.